Have you ever known that you needed to do something or felt like you needed to do something and then you resisted it? What I'm finding in my life personally, and what I found in the lives of many of my friends and colleagues, is that place where you know that you're supposed to act, that place where you resist. It's kind of the edge of resistance. That edge is your growth curve or your level up opportunity, or that next place to step into faith and exercise some bigger, better version of yourself. For me, that place that I've been resisting is being very open and honest about who I am and what I do in my life. And it's not that I'm hiding anything. I've just been careful. I've been careful to talk about certain topics in certain ways. So, for example, the name of the podcast until this episode was Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, because I thought it'd be cool to play on this idea of me being a former prosecutor, and I thought it would look edgy to say Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. But to be completely honest, I also didn't want to say anything about faith directly in the title because I was afraid it would be off-putting. But the whole reason I started the podcast was to talk about faith. However, I've been putting it off and I've been cloaking it in different terminologies. So I know if you've listened to any of my previous episodes, you know a little bit about my story. I was raised in a charismatic Christian environment growing up. I know I talked about this on a previous podcast. I suffered some physical abuse, not by my family or parents or anybody close to me, but some sexual abuse from someone outside of my family. But it was a close family friends, and they were in a position of authority in the church. And so that right there kind of started the schism between me and God and the church. I started identifying myself as an agnostic. I could never quite get to the point of being atheist. I have always believed in a higher power. I have always believed that there is a creator, but I very much said, I'm agnostic and I don't believe in religion and religion is the devil and all these horrible people come from religion. And I was vehemently against religion, any organized religion, frankly. But it was very interesting because I think what's so cool about God is bigger than humanity, bigger than human emotions, bigger than anything that we can possibly understand. And this idea of God punishing us or being disappointed in us, I just don't think that applies. God is just as close as a breath and always has been. At least in my life, that's been my experience. And in the times when I was most desperate, it showed what was in my heart. It showed who I was. And I say all that to say what's been on my mind recently is how I still haven't been acting in faith. I remember one day I had pulled myself out. I had gotten out of that really toxic relationship. I was a partner at a law firm in Colorado Springs, and I was contemplating opening my own law firm. And I wasn't sure. I'd never done anything like that before. I had a background as a prosecutor, but I didn't have a business degree. I had my psychology and philosophy degrees. And so I was kind of toying with this idea. And I swear, you can believe me or not, but I swear to you this happened. I remember I was in my shower in my apartment that had become my safe haven. This apartment was the one that I couldn't afford, but I jumped out and got it because it felt beautiful and safe. And it was getting me out of that really terrible relationship. And I remember my hands were in my hair. I was scrubbing my hair. And I was thinking about this idea of, should I start my own law firm? And I remember my hands were right there in my hair, and I heard this still small voice say, if you jump, I'll catch you. That was the beginning of my law firm. And what I didn't realize then, and now have come to realize, is God telling me to open my law firm was his way of drawing me out and starting to teach me true faith. I think that this idea of faith where someone expresses that they have faith or they grew up in a church and they have faith, I think faith has to be something you experience. It's an experiential thing where you have to have your own relationship with God to experience faith. Just saying you believe something is not the same as exercising faith. And for me, this was my moment of truly coming into faith and exercising faith. And that act of faith led me then all the way up to where I am now, to what I believe is actually what God's been trying to call me to do for quite some time, and I've been resistant. The whole purpose of this podcast was for me to get out here and start talking to people about faith and about using faith in business, because I think it's something that is not talked about a lot. I think that a lot of people separate faith and business. It's, the spirituality versus the logical. But what I have found in my personal life is that faith and business are so closely intertwined because business is just an act of faith if you approach it correctly. Imagine if you had the ultimate business coach. Like, imagine if you could, and take all political things aside, but pull one of these multi-billionaire successful people in your industry and ask them to just show you what to do and follow them around and get their advice. You would do that in a heartbeat because they know what they're doing very clearly. Like, if I could follow, in the law firm world, Morgan and Morgan, they are the big law firm names. If I could follow one of the Morgans around and learn everything from them, I would take that in a heartbeat to learn how to run my firm the way that they have done it. But if you think about it, how much more helpful is God? Literally, if you are a Christian and you believe, and even if you aren't a Christian, but you still believe in God, if you believe there is a God who created absolutely everything in the entire universe, wouldn't he know a thing or two about business? And that's what I want to talk about on this podcast. And I apologize for spending 8 episodes kind of beating around the bush. I'll be totally honest. I've been fighting God on this for about 2 years. God actually told me, the still small voice again. I've heard it twice. I have heard it in the shower when I was washing my hair saying, if you leap, I'll catch you. And then I heard it in August of 2023. When God told me, your job, your purpose in life is to teach faith. And I had this inkling that he meant that I should get on social media and get on podcasts and talk about this and try to help people normalize the idea of combining their faith with their business, because it's just not done anymore. People have got so many negative connotations, and I was the biggest one of them. So I totally get it. I'm never going to take offense when someone says, oh, that God stuff. I get it. I was there, literally. But what I found is there's just not enough out there anymore about this concept, and it's needed now more than ever. Now we have people going and asking AI like it's God for advice on what to do with their life. People are getting, no joke, I have heard stories of people getting engaged to ChatGPT, people asking it to marry them. People are losing their ever-loving minds. But we have the ultimate, not AI, we have the ultimate thing that knows everything available and accessible to us if we would just give ourselves time to be quiet, to tap in, and to ask for direction. And that's what I'm really wanting to do on this podcast, is I'm wanting to talk with people about how they utilize their faith in their business and how their businesses actually have become a mechanism of faith. The reason we're changing the name of the podcast to Success Stories, 360 Success Stories, is it comes from this idea of not just doing things for the money. Yes, business is about creating profit, but if you look at it from a faith-based perspective, a business is not just about creating profit. That comes, and you can create money and you can live the life that you want to live. That's completely fine as long as you're putting God first and making sure your priorities are straight. But what these businesses that we have do are they're vehicles for us to utilize our faith, for us to grow in our walks with God, and they're vehicles for us to help others. Even if you're not a Christian, I encourage you to keep tuning into these podcast episodes, because what you're going to hear is you're going to hear stories of people stepping out and exercising faith. And we're not always going to have guests on here that are Christian. We're going to have guests who believe in God. What we do is we bring people on who are acting in faith. They are acting at the direction of God. And we hear these stories about how their businesses, when they act in faith, are actually proponents of change. They're not just building wealth or revenue or profit. They do. And honestly, the more you act in faith, it's kind of interesting. The more profitable your company becomes and the more aligned everything becomes, because you're lining up with what's important first and foremost for you. What you're going to hear on these stories are people acting in faith in their businesses. And I think it's important for this message to get out there. It's important for people to hear this and be able to see, number one, connect with other people who are acting in this way, acting as if God knows everything, not AI. And I bring this up because I honestly love AI. I think it's a super useful tool. I think it's really cool, but I think, as with everything, it carries the potential for serious harm if it's used improperly. Just like money. If used properly, they're completely fine. But once you start prioritizing that tool and putting it above God, or relying on it before God, or trying to white knuckle and rely on your own self-sufficiency, that's where things start falling apart. But I invite you to listen to this podcast and start hearing these stories, because hearing other people's stories helps build your own faith and helps you see what's possible as well. So we are changing the podcast. We're going to change the intro and the outro, and I'm going to leave the other episodes as they were, just so you can see the progression, because this podcast is, in a way, it's my act of faith, and it's my journey of faith being very visible for other people to see. But what I'm trying to do is build this community of people who are willing to share their faith, willing to share their journey, and willing to share in the success and business principles and all of that. The whole point of it being 360 success stories is because success is not just about money. It's not just about building wealth. Success, in my opinion, is a complete, whole, well-rounded success. That's why we have the 360 degrees in our name. It's success in spirituality, success in relationships, success in business, success in health, success in finances, both personal and business. So what I want to encourage you all to do is, if you are someone who has had success through faith, if you have experienced success in any way, let me know. I'd love to have you on the podcast. My goal is to start getting more business owners on here who have had success, and it doesn't have to be necessarily business success. It can be just general success in life. I will tell you, the more I talk to God about my relationship, the more successful my marriage is. The more I talk to God about how I can be a better mother, the better I am at mothering my son. It's not just success in one area, but this holistic approach to success is what we're interested in talking about on this podcast. And my commitment to you as part of this is I will not continue hiding and equivocating and trying to be something I'm not, because that's not what I'm called to be. I'm called to be someone who stands up for what I believe in and actually talks about what I believe in, even though it's scary. I shouldn't allow the opinions of other people to change what I know to be true, or to limit me in talking about what I know to be true. And my hope is that as we go through and we walk through this journey together, the people who may or may not have negative opinions of me for putting this content out there will get to know a little bit more about me and realize I'm not a crazy kook. I'm not some one way or another leaning person, but I am a person of faith. And I am a person who believes that God greatly cares about each and every one of us, even the business owners, even the people amassing large amounts of wealth. I believe God cares, and God has a vested interest in our success. And I believe that the way that we become more successful in every aspect of our lives is to do so using our faith. So I hope you'll join me in this pursuit of learning more about ourselves and learning more about our relationship with God through faith, through our businesses, through the successes that we have. And I cannot wait to bring people to you on this podcast moving forward to talk about the success that we have in our businesses using our faith. I'm really excited to go on this journey with you all. I'm looking forward to talking to our first guest. And if you know anybody that you think would be a great fit for the podcast, please email us. Our email is support@360strategicsuccess.com. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.